The receipt was dated 3 weeks ago. I stood in my walk-in closet at 2:47 in the morning, the small piece of paper trembling between my fingers. The overhead light was too bright, making everything look harsh and unforgiving. I had come in here looking for my gray cardigan because I was cold. The bedroom had felt like a freezer lately, even though Brandon kept the thermostat at 72 degrees. But it was not the temperature that made me cold. It was him. I found the receipt in the inside pocket of his navy blazer. I was not even searching for anything. I had just brushed against it while reaching for my sweater on the top shelf, and the jacket fell. When I picked it up, the paper slipped out and landed face up on the carpet. Lacy Dreams Boutique. That was the name at the top. I knew that store. It was the expensive lingerie shop downtown, the one with the red awning and the window displays that made you blush when you walked past. I had mentioned wanting to go there once about 6 months ago when things between Brandon and me still felt normal. When he still touched me. When he still looked at me like I was someone he wanted. He had laughed and said it was overpriced. A waste of money. But there it was. A receipt for $247. For items I had never seen. For items I had never worn. For items that never came home to me. I sat down on the small ottoman in the corner of the closet, my cardigan forgotten on the floor. My hands were shaking so badly that the receipt rattled like a leaf in wind. I read the item descriptions 3 times, hoping I had made a mistake. Hoping maybe he had bought something for me and hidden it somewhere for a surprise. But I knew better. Brandon had not touched me in 3 months. 3 months of sleeping on opposite sides of our king-sized bed. 3 months of excuses. Too tired from work. Stressed about the Morrison case. Not feeling well. 3 months of me reaching for him in the dark and finding only his cold back turned toward me. I had tried everything. I cooked his favorite meals, pot roast with roasted vegetables and garlic mashed potatoes. I bought new dresses, changed my hair, wore the perfume he used to say drove him crazy. I suggested date nights, weekend getaways, marriage counseling. Every suggestion was met with a dismissive wave or a vague promise of maybe later. And every night, I lay awake wondering what was wrong with me. Was I not pretty enough anymore? Not thin enough? Not interesting enough? I had scrutinized myself in the bathroom mirror until I hated my own reflection. I had cried in the shower so many times that I had lost count. But now, sitting in my closet holding a receipt for lingerie I would never wear, everything suddenly made sense. There was nothing wrong with me. There was someone else. I do not know how long I sat there. The house was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of Brandon snoring in our bedroom. Our bedroom. The room where I had been begging for scraps of affection while he saved himself for another woman. My phone buzzed on the dresser outside the closet door. I ignored it. I could not move. I felt like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything that made me human. We had been married for 5 years. Together for 8. I had given this man everything. My trust. My loyalty. My best years. I had turned down a job offer in Atlanta because he did not want to leave the city. I had put off having children because he said we were not ready yet. I had shrunk myself to fit into his life, and now I was discovering that his life had no room for me at all. The tears came then hot and silent. They rolled down my cheeks and dripped onto the receipt, smudging the ink. Part of me wanted to wake him up right now, to throw the paper in his face and demand answers. Part of me wanted to scream until my throat was raw. But a smaller part, a quieter part, told me to wait. Do not show your hand yet, Amara. Think. Plan. Be smart. That voice sounded like my grandmother. Grandma Ruth had raised me after my mother worked double shifts at the hospital. She had taught me that a woman's greatest power was her patience. Fools react, she always said. Wise women respond. I folded the receipt carefully and slipped it into my robe pocket. Then I wiped my face with the back of my hand and took 3 deep breaths. When I walked back into the bedroom, Brandon was still sleeping, his mouth slightly open, completely unaware that his wife had just discovered his secret. I climbed into bed beside him and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. The next morning, I made breakfast like nothing had happened. Scrambled eggs, turkey bacon, whole wheat toast. Brandon came into the kitchen wearing his charcoal suit, the one that made him look like the successful attorney he was. He barely glanced at me. I might be late tonight, he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. Big meeting with the partners. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. Okay. He paused, looking at me over the rim of his mug. For a moment I thought he might say something else. Something human. But then he just grabbed his briefcase and walked toward the door. See you later, he called over his shoulder. The door closed behind him and I was alone. I sat down at the kitchen table and looked around at the life I had built. The custom cabinets I had picked out. The backsplash tiles I had installed with my own hands. The herb garden on the windowsill that I tended every morning. All of it felt like a stage set now. A pretty backdrop for a play that was never real. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. It was a text from my best friend Tiffany. "Brunch Sunday? Miss your face." I typed back, "Yes. I need to see you." She responded immediately, "Everything okay?" I stared at those two words for a long time. Was everything okay? No, nothing was okay. My husband was buying lingerie for another woman while refusing to touch his own wife. My marriage was a lie. My life was a lie. But I was not going to fall apart. Not yet. I typed, "We need to talk. Sunday." Then I got up, washed the dishes Brandon had left in the sink and got ready for work. I put on my emerald green blouse, the one that brought out the gold in my brown skin. I did my makeup carefully, methodically. Foundation, concealer to hide the dark circles from not sleeping, mascara, lipstick in a deep berry shade. When I looked in the mirror, I did not see a broken woman. I saw a woman who had just woken up. A woman who was done pretending. A woman who was about to stop chasing a man who clearly did not want to be caught. Not because I was giving up on my marriage, but because I was finally ready to choose myself. The next few weeks passed in a strange haze. I went to work. I came home. I cooked dinner. I slept beside a stranger. But underneath the surface, something was shifting inside me. I stopped initiating contact with Brandon. When he came home late, I did not ask where he had been. When he claimed to be tired, I simply said goodnight and rolled over. When he scrolled through his phone with a slight smile on his face, I pretended not to notice. And I watched. I paid attention to things I had been too lovesick to see before. The way he always angled his phone away from me. The new cologne he had started wearing, something woodsy and expensive that I had never smelled before. The gym bag that now lived in his car instead of our garage. Each detail was a piece of a puzzle I was putting together in my mind. Not because I needed more proof. The receipt had been enough. But because I needed to understand the full scope of his betrayal before I decided what to do about it. One night, about a week after finding the receipt, Brandon reached for me in bed. His hand landed on my hip and I felt myself tense. "Amara," he murmured, his voice low. "It has been a while." I lay perfectly still. He was actually touching me. For the first time in months he was reaching out. But something felt wrong. His hand felt wrong on my body. Like it did not belong there anymore. "I thought you were tired," I said quietly. He sighed and pulled his hand back. "I am." "Forget it." He rolled over and within minutes was snoring again. I lay awake, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, and wondered who he had been thinking about when he reached for me. Sunday finally arrived and I drove to meet Tiffany at our usual brunch spot, a cafe with big windows and outdoor seating. She was already there when I arrived, her box braids piled high on her head, wearing a bright coral dress that matched her energy. Tiffany had always been the bold one, the loud one, the one who said what everyone else was thinking. She took one look at my face and her smile faded. "Girl," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "What is going on?" I sat down across from her and told her everything. The receipt. The cold bed. The distance. The phone he guarded like it contained state secrets. By the time I finished, Tiffany's jaw was tight and her eyes were blazing. "So what are you going to do?" she asked. I took a sip of my mimosa and set the glass down carefully. "I do not know yet. But I know I am done begging him to love me." Tiffany reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Whatever you decide, I am with you. You hear me? I am with you." I squeezed her hand back and felt something crack open in my chest. Not despair this time. Something else. Something that felt almost like relief. For the first time in months, I did not feel alone. 2 weeks after finding the receipt, I found the rest. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Brandon had come home from work, eaten the dinner I prepared, and announced he was going to take a shower. He left his phone on the kitchen counter, something he never did anymore. Usually it was glued to his hand or tucked safely in his pocket. But tonight he forgot. The phone sat there beside the fruit bowl, its black screen reflecting the overhead light. I stood at the sink washing dishes and staring at it, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I had two choices. I could ignore the phone and continue living in uncertainty. Or I could look and know for sure. I chose to know. My hands were wet and soapy as I dried them quickly on the dish towel. I could hear the shower running upstairs, the pipes creaking in that old familiar way. I had maybe 10 minutes. Maybe less. Brandon's passcode was his mother's birthday. He had never changed it since the day we met. I typed it in and the screen opened to his home page, and for a moment everything looked normal. Work emails. Sports apps. News alerts. Then I opened his messages. Her name was Simone. The text went back 8 months. 8 months of conversations I knew nothing about. 8 months of lies. I scrolled through them with a strange calm, like I was reading about someone else's life. The early messages were professional. Discussions about case files and court dates. She worked at his firm, a paralegal named Simone Hayes. I had probably met her at one of Brandon's work events without even knowing. But the tone shifted around month 3. The messages became personal. Inside jokes I did not understand. Compliments about how she looked in a meeting. Then came the first hint of something more. I cannot stop thinking about last night, she had written. Brandon's response, neither can I. When can I see you again? I kept scrolling. The messages became explicit. Detailed descriptions of things they had done together. Plans for hotels and weekend trips when he told me he had work conferences. Photos that burned themselves into my brain. Photos of her in the lingerie from that receipt. Photos of him looking at her with an expression I had not seen on his face in years. The shower was still running. I had time. I kept going. The more recent messages were the ones that hurt the most. Not because they were more graphic, but because they showed me exactly who my husband had become. Simone, when are you going to tell her? Brandon, soon. I just need to handle this carefully. She is fragile. Simone, she's holding you back. You deserve better. Brandon, I know. Be patient. I have a plan. Simone, I am tired of waiting. Brandon, I told you, cutting off intimacy is step 1. She will get frustrated and start fights. Then I will have grounds for the divorce. I will not look like the bad guy. There it was. In plain text. His plan. He had been denying me on purpose. Not because he was tired. Not because he was stressed. Because he was trying to provoke me into becoming the villain in his story. He wanted me to lose my temper. He wanted me to give him a reason to leave. He wanted to walk away looking innocent while I looked crazy. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. All those nights I had cried myself to sleep, wondering what was wrong with me. All those days I had bent over backward trying to please him. All that time he had been playing me like a game. And I had almost fallen for it. The shower turned off upstairs. I heard the bathroom door open and Brandon's footsteps moving toward the bedroom. I quickly took screenshots of everything. Every text. Every photo. Every plan he had made with that woman. I sent them to my own email and deleted the evidence from his messages so he would not know I had seen. Then I placed his phone back exactly where it had been and returned to the sink. When Brandon came downstairs in his sweatpants and t-shirt, his hair still damp from the shower, I was calmly drying the last dish. Smells good in here, he said, reaching for his phone. Roast chicken, I replied, not looking at him. Your favorite. He grunted a response and sat down on the couch, already absorbed in whatever was on his screen. Probably texting her. Telling her that his plan was working. That his wife was cooking him dinner like a good little fool. I finished cleaning up the kitchen and went upstairs to our bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. So this was my marriage. A manipulation. A scheme. A man who promised to love me forever was actively plotting my destruction. Not because I had done anything wrong. But because he had found someone new and could not be bothered to have an honest conversation. I thought about my grandmother again. Grandma Ruth had been married to my grandfather for 52 years before he passed away. She always said that marriage was not about perfection. It was about showing up. About choosing each other every day even when it was hard. Brandon had stopped choosing me a long time ago. And now I knew exactly when and why. The question was, what was I going to do about it? Part of me wanted to confront him immediately. To throw every screenshot in his face and watch him squirm. To see the panic in his eyes when he realized he had been caught. But that would be exactly what he wanted. A fight. An explosion. Grounds for divorce that made him look like the victim. No. I was not going to give him that satisfaction. I was going to beat him at his own game. The next morning I called in sick to work. Brandon had already left for the office, probably to see Simone, and I had the house to myself. I sat at my laptop in my home office and began to research. Divorce lawyers. Financial records. Property laws in our state. I spent hours learning everything I could about how to protect myself when a marriage ends. I discovered that I had more rights than I thought. That our house, which we had purchased together after the wedding, was marital property. That his retirement accounts and investments were subject to division. I also discovered that in our state, proof of infidelity could influence the divorce settlement. The judge had discretion to award more to the wrong spouse, especially if the cheating partner had used marital funds on the affair. I thought about those hotel receipts. Those expensive gifts. Those weekend trips disguised as work conferences. Every dollar he had spent on Simone Hayes was a dollar that belonged to our marriage. By noon, I had made a list of every financial account I knew about. Our joint checking. Our savings. His separate investment account that he thought I did not know about. The credit cards. The mortgage. I documented everything. Then I made a phone call. Law Office of Patricia Okonkwo. How may I help you? I need to schedule a consultation, I said. For a divorce. The appointment was set for the following week. I wrote it in my calendar as dentist appointment and cleared my afternoon schedule. That evening when Brandon came home, I greeted him with a smile. I had made his favorite dinner again. I asked him about his day and listened to him lie about meetings and deadlines. I laughed at his jokes and agreed when he said he was thinking about buying a new car. And the whole time I felt nothing. It was strange, that absence of emotion. For months I had been drowning in feelings. Sadness, confusion, loneliness, desperation. But now that I knew the truth, all of that had evaporated. In its place was something hard and clear. Something that felt like survival. Brandon seemed pleased by my mood. He actually sat next to me on the couch after dinner, something he had not done in weeks. He even put his arm around me while we watched television. "This is nice," he said. "We should do this more often." "Yes," I agreed, keeping my voice pleasant. "We should." Inside, I was counting the days until my appointment with the lawyer. Counting the days until I could begin building my escape. Counting the days until I walked away from this man and never looked back. He thought he was the one in control. He thought I was sitting here grateful for any crumb of attention he threw my way. He thought I would keep chasing him until I made myself the villain in his story. But he had no idea who he was dealing with. Grandma Ruth did not raise a fool. She raised a woman who knew how to wait. A woman who knew how to plan. A woman who knew that revenge was not about explosions and confrontations. It was about walking away with your dignity intact and watching the other person crumble. And that was exactly what I intended to do. Patricia Okonkwo's office was on the 14th floor of a glass building downtown. The waiting room had leather chairs, fresh flowers on every surface, and artwork that probably cost more than my car. It was the kind of place that screamed success. The kind of place where winners came to win. I was going to be one of them. The receptionist, a young man in a crisp white shirt, offered me water or coffee while I waited. I took the water and sat by the window looking out at the city below. From up here, everything looked small and manageable. The streets, the cars, the people going about their lives without knowing that mine was falling apart. But I was not falling apart. I was rebuilding. "Mrs. Thompson?" The receptionist's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Ms. Okonkwo is ready for you." Patricia Okonkwo was exactly what I had hoped for. She was a tall woman in her mid-40s with short natural hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her office was lined with bookshelves and framed awards. When she stood to shake my hand, her grip was firm and confident. "Please sit down," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "Tell me why you are here." I had rehearsed what I was going to say, but when I opened my mouth, the words came out differently than I planned. "My husband is having an affair," I said. "He has been sleeping with another woman for at least 8 months. He has been deliberately withholding intimacy from me to try to make me start fights so he can blame the divorce on me. And I want to leave him without losing everything I have worked for." Patricia nodded slowly, taking notes on a legal pad. "Do you have evidence of the affair?" "Yes." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots. Texts, photos, plans. All of it. She scrolled through the messages with a neutral expression. Nothing surprised her. She had probably seen it all before. "This is good," she said finally. "This is very good. What else do you have?" I handed her the folder I had prepared. Financial records, property documents, everything I could gather. She flipped through it, nodding occasionally, asking questions. "Do you want to keep the house?" she asked. "I have not decided yet. I just want what is fair." "Fair is subjective in divorce proceedings," Patricia said. "What we can get you is what you are legally entitled to. Based on what you have shown me, that could be substantial." She explained the process. Filing the petition. Serving the papers. The mandatory waiting period. The discovery phase where both sides would have to disclose their finances. Mediation if necessary. Court if we could not reach an agreement. "How long does it usually take?" I asked. "Depends on how cooperative your husband is. A contested divorce can take anywhere from 6 months to a year or more. An uncontested divorce can be finalized in a few months." I nodded. "He will fight it. He does not like to lose." Patricia smiled for the first time. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted prey. "Neither do I," she said. We spent the next hour going over strategy. She advised me to continue acting normal at home for now. Do not tip him off that anything has changed. Do not confront him about the affair. Let him think he is still in control. When you are ready to file, she said, I want you to have all your important documents secured. Personal papers, jewelry, anything you do not want to fight over later. Find a new place to stay. Open your own bank account if you do not have one already. Protect yourself first. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in months. There was a plan now. A path forward. I was not trapped anymore. That Sunday, I drove to my grandmother's house. Grandma Ruth lived in the same small brick house she had shared with my grandfather for decades. The garden out front was overgrown now, but she refused to let anyone help her with it. Said she was not dead yet. She was sitting on the porch when I pulled up, a glass of sweet tea in her hand and her Bible in her lap. She was 82 years old, her hair completely white, her dark brown skin weathered by time. But her eyes were as sharp as ever. There is my girl, she said as I climbed the porch steps. You look tired. I am tired, Grandma. She patted the chair beside her. Sit. Tell me. I sat down and stared at the street for a long moment before speaking. The words were hard to say out loud even to her. Brandon is cheating on me. Grandma Ruth did not react. She just nodded slowly like she had been expecting this. How long have you known? She asked. About a month. I found proof. And what are you going to do about it? I told her about the lawyer. About the plan to gather evidence and protect my assets. About my decision to stop chasing him and start preparing to leave. She listened without interrupting, her weathered hands wrapped around her glass of tea. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she set down her glass and looked at me. You know what your grandfather used to say? She asked. He used to say that a man will show you exactly who he is if you pay attention. The problem is most women are too busy trying to see who he could be. I felt tears prick my eyes. I thought he was different, Grandma. I thought he loved me. Maybe he did. Once. She reached over and took my hand. But love is not a feeling, baby. Love is a choice. And that man stopped choosing you a long time ago. The question is, when are you going to stop choosing him? I already have, I said quietly. She squeezed my hand. Good. Then you are already halfway there. We sat together on that porch for hours. She told me stories about her marriage, the hard times and the good times. About how Grandpa had never been perfect but had always shown up. About how real love was not about grand gestures but about small daily choices. You are going to be okay, she said as I got up to leave. You come from strong stock, Amara Bennett. Do not you ever forget that. I kissed her cheek and drove home, her words echoing in my head. The next few weeks fell into a careful rhythm. I went to work. I smiled at my colleagues. I exceeded my targets and earned praise from my supervisors. On the outside nothing had changed. But on the inside I was building an exit. I opened a new bank account in my name only and started transferring small amounts of money each paycheck. I gathered copies of our tax returns, mortgage documents, and investment statements. I made a list of items in the house that were mine before the marriage, things that would not be subject to division. Tiffany helped me look at apartments. We spent 2 weekends driving around the city, viewing units that ranged from cramped studios to overpriced lofts. Finally we found one that felt right. A 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood with big windows and hardwood floors. It is perfect, Tiffany said, standing in the empty living room. You can actually breathe in here. I wrote a check for the deposit and first month's rent. The property manager said I could move in whenever I was ready. Now I just had to decide when that would be. At home, Brandon remained oblivious. He came and went as he pleased, his phone always buzzing with messages he thought I could not see. He slept beside me every night but might as well have been a stranger. One evening he actually tried to be intimate again. He rolled toward me in bed, his hands sliding under my shirt. Hey, he murmured. It has been a while. I felt my body go rigid. His touch felt wrong. Contaminated. I knew where those hands had been. I knew who else he had touched with them. Not tonight, I said quietly. I am not feeling well. He pulled back with a sigh. You never feel well anymore. I wanted to laugh. He had the nerve to complain when he had been the one rejecting me for months. But I kept my face neutral. I have a headache, I said. Maybe tomorrow. He muttered something under his breath and rolled over. Within minutes he was snoring. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. The end was coming. I could feel it. All the pieces were in place. The lawyer, the apartment, the evidence. All I had to do was pull the trigger. But first I needed to tell my mother. Lorraine Bennett lived about an hour outside the city in a small house surrounded by pine trees. She had moved there after retiring from nursing, claiming she needed peace and quiet after 30 years of chaos in hospital emergency rooms. When I pulled into her driveway that Saturday morning, she was already standing on the porch. Mothers always know when something is wrong. "Come inside," she said, hugging me tight. I made breakfast. Over eggs and toast, I told her everything. She listened with her jaw tight and her hands clenched around her coffee mug. "I am going to kill him," she said when I finished. "No, you are not." "I might. Mom." She took a deep breath and unclenched her hands. "Fine. I will not kill him. But I want to." "That man stood in front of our entire family and promised to love you forever. And this is how he repays you." "I know." "I never liked him," she admitted. "Never said anything because you seemed happy. But there was always something off about him. Something slick." I thought about all the times my mother had been polite but distant around Brandon. All the subtle warnings I had ignored because I was too in love to see clearly. "You should have told me," I said. "Would you have listened?" I shook my head. "No, I would not have. I had been too far gone." We talked for hours. She offered me money, a place to stay, anything I needed. But I told her I had it handled. I had a plan. I was not the same woman I had been a year ago. When I left her house that afternoon, she stood on the porch and watched me drive away. In my rearview mirror, she looked small and worried, but also proud. That night, I came home to find Brandon dressed in a new suit I had never seen before. "Gotta work dinner?" he said, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. "Do not wait up." I nodded and went to the kitchen to make myself a salad. I heard the door close behind him and the sound of his car pulling out of the driveway. He was probably going to see her. Probably going to tell her how close they were to their happy ending. Probably going to make promises he had no intention of keeping. But that was not my problem anymore. I had my own happy ending to build. The morning I decided to stop trying was unremarkable in every way. There was no big fight. No dramatic revelation. No final straw that broke my back. I simply woke up, looked at Brandon sleeping beside me, and realized I did not care anymore. For months I had been chasing him. Trying to get his attention. Trying to fix whatever was broken between us. I had analyzed every conversation, replayed every rejection, and wondered endlessly what I was doing wrong. But that morning, lying in our bed watching the sunrise through the curtains, I just stopped. I got up, made breakfast for myself, and did not bother preparing anything for him. When he came downstairs looking confused, I was already dressed for work. "No breakfast?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "Ran out of eggs," I lied. The carton in the refrigerator was full. "There is cereal in the pantry." I grabbed my purse and walked out the door before he could respond. At work, I threw myself into my projects with renewed energy. I had been coasting for the past several months, too distracted by my failing marriage to give my job the attention it deserved. But now that I had mentally checked out of my marriage, I had space in my brain again. I finished 3 proposals that had been sitting on my desk for weeks. I scheduled meetings with clients I had been avoiding. I volunteered to lead a new campaign that everyone else was afraid to tackle. My boss noticed and called me into her office. "Whatever has gotten into you, I like it," she said. "Keep this up and we will talk about your future here." I smiled and thanked her. The future. For the first time in a long time, that word did not fill me with dread. At home, I continued my new approach. I stopped asking Brandon about his day. Stopped checking his schedule. Stopped waiting up when he came home late. Stopped crying in the shower and stopped analyzing his moods. I just lived my life like he was a roommate I barely knew. It took him about a week to notice. "You seem different lately," he said one evening. We were sitting in the living room, him on his phone, me reading a book I had been meaning to finish for months. "Different how?" I asked without looking up. "I do not know. Distant, I guess." I turned a page. "I am just tired from work." He stared at me for a long moment. I could feel his eyes on me but refused to meet them. "Okay," he said finally. "If you say so." But I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. He was used to me pursuing him. Used to me asking what was wrong and trying to fix it. This new Amara who did not seem to care was unfamiliar territory. Good. Let him wonder. The second week he started trying harder. He came home early one night with flowers. Red roses, the kind he used to bring me when we were dating. "Thought you might like these," he said, holding them out like a peace offering. I took them, put them in a vase with water, and set them on the kitchen counter. "They are nice," I said. "Thank you." That was it. No questions about what the occasion was. No tearful gratitude that he was finally paying attention to me. Just a simple acknowledgement and back to whatever I had been doing. He stood in the kitchen looking lost. This was not how the script was supposed to go. I was thinking we could go out to dinner this weekend, he said. That Italian place you like. I have plans with Tiffany this weekend. Maybe another time. His jaw tightened slightly. You have been spending a lot of time with Tiffany lately. She is my friend. I know. I just feel like we never see each other anymore. I finally looked at him. Really looked. He seemed genuinely confused, like a child whose toy was not working properly. He was trying all the buttons he used to push to get a reaction from me, and nothing was happening. We see each other every day, Brandon. We live together. That is not what I mean. I closed my book and set it aside. What do you mean then? He opened his mouth but no words came out. He did not know how to say it. He wanted me to chase him again. He wanted me to beg for his attention so he could go back to withholding it. But I was no longer playing that game. Nothing, he said eventually. Forget it. He walked out of the room and I heard him climbing the stairs to our bedroom. A moment later his phone buzzed. Probably Simone wondering why he was home early. I picked up my book and continued reading. The apartment Tiffany had helped me find was waiting. I had paid the deposit and first month's rent, but I had not moved anything in yet. I was waiting for the right moment. That moment came on a Tuesday afternoon. I left work early and drove to our house. Brandon's car was not in the driveway, which meant he was still at the office or wherever he went these days. I had about 3 hours before he typically came home. I worked quickly. Clothes, shoes, toiletries, personal documents, photo albums, jewelry that had been gifts from my family. I packed everything into boxes and loaded them into my car. I made multiple trips, stacking the boxes in my new apartment's living room. When I was done, I stood in our bedroom and looked around. The closet looked emptier now, but not obviously so. A casual observer might not notice anything was missing. Brandon certainly would not. He never paid attention to my things. I left his wedding ring on the dresser. Just the ring. No note. No explanation. Let him figure it out. Then I drove to my new apartment and started unpacking. The space was smaller than what I was used to, but it felt more like mine. The walls were bare and the rooms were empty, but that meant I could fill them however I wanted. No more adjusting to someone else's taste. No more compromising on furniture or paint colors. That first night alone, I ordered takeout, sat on my new living room floor, and ate straight from the container. The silence was strange at first. No footsteps upstairs, no sports games on the television, no phone buzzing with messages for someone else. Just me. I thought I would feel sad. Or scared. Or lonely. But instead I felt something else entirely. Relief. My phone rang around 9. Brandon. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. Then the text started. Where are you? Why is your ring on the dresser? Amara, answer your phone. This is not funny. Call me back. I did not respond to any of them. Instead, I finished my dinner, took a long hot shower in my new bathroom and went to bed early. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. The next morning, I blocked his number. Not permanently. Just for now. I needed space to think clearly, and I could not do that with him flooding my phone with messages. Tiffany came over that evening to help me unpack. She showed up with wine and a speaker playing music that made her want to dance. Look at you, she said, spinning around my empty living room. Living your best life. It does not feel real yet. It will. She pulled me into a hug. I'm so proud of you. This was the hardest part and you did it. I hugged her back and felt tears prick my eyes. Not sad tears. Something else. Maybe gratitude. Maybe hope. We spent the evening assembling cheap furniture from the big box store. Tiffany was terrible at following instructions and I was not much better. But by midnight I had a bed frame, a small couch and a kitchen table. Home sweet home, Tiffany declared, collapsing onto the couch. Now all you need is some plants. And maybe art. And definitely curtains because your neighbors can see directly into your living room right now. I laughed. A real laugh. I could not remember the last time I had laughed like that. The next day at work, I received an email from Patricia Okonkwo. Everything was ready. The petition had been drafted. All she needed was my signature and she could file. Are you ready? She wrote. I typed back, yes. The divorce papers would be served at his office, in front of his colleagues, on a day and time of his choosing that would cause maximum embarrassment. Patricia had suggested it. Let him feel a fraction of the humiliation he has put you through, she said. I agreed. Brandon Thompson had thought he could break me. He thought his little scheme would drive me crazy and give him an easy exit. He thought I would beg and cry and fight until I became the villain in his story. Instead, I had simply walked away. And now he was about to find out what that really meant. Brandon Thompson was served divorce papers at 11:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning. I was not there to see it, but Patricia Okonkwo had arranged for a process server who was known for being efficient and discreet. He walked into the lobby of Brandon's law firm, asked for Brandon by name, and handed him the envelope in front of the reception desk. Patricia called me 15 minutes later. "It is done," she said. "He has been served." I was sitting at my desk at work, staring at my computer screen without seeing anything on it. My heart was beating fast, but my hands were steady. "How did he react?" I asked. The server said he went pale. Then he excused himself and went straight to his office. "He has been in there ever since with the door closed." I nodded even though she could not see me. "Okay. What happens next?" "We wait. He has 30 days to respond. Most likely he will hire his own attorney and we will begin negotiations. Or he will try to contact you directly to talk you out of it." "He cannot contact me. I blocked his number." "He will find a way. They always do." Patricia's voice softened slightly. "Are you okay?" I thought about the question. Was I okay? My marriage was officially ending. The life I had planned and built for 5 years was crumbling. The man I had loved was about to become my legal adversary. But I was not sad. I was not scared. "I am okay," I said. And I meant it. The first attempt at contact came that same afternoon. Brandon showed up at my office. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked on the conference room door, her face apologetic. "I am sorry to interrupt," she said, "but there is someone in the lobby asking for you. He says he is your husband." I felt every eye in the room turn toward me. My colleagues knew I was married, but Brandon had never visited me at work before. This was new. This was unexpected. This was exactly what Patricia had predicted. I excused myself from the meeting and walked to the lobby. Brandon was standing by the reception desk, still in his work suit, his face tight with barely controlled anger. "We need to talk," he said when he saw me. "There is nothing to talk about. You filed for divorce. Without even discussing it with me. Without warning. You just walked out and served me papers like I was some kind of criminal." I kept my voice level. "Lower your voice. This is my place of work." He glanced around at the curious faces watching us and seemed to collect himself. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter but no less intense. "Please, can we just talk? 5 minutes. That is all I am asking." I could have said no. I should have said no. Patricia had advised me to communicate only through lawyers from this point forward. But there was something I needed to say to him. Something I needed him to hear from my own mouth. 5 minutes, I agreed. Outside. We walked to a small courtyard behind my office building. It was empty except for a few pigeons pecking at crumbs on the concrete. Brandon stood across from me, his hands in his pockets, looking at me like he had never seen me before. "Why?" he asked. "Why are you doing this?" "You know why." "No, I do not. Everything was fine. We were working through things. And then suddenly you just disappear. You take your clothes. You leave your ring. You file for divorce without saying a single word to me. What am I supposed to think?" I stared at him. He really was clueless. Or pretending to be. Either way, I was done playing along. "I know about Simone," I said quietly. His face went white. For a moment he did not move. Did not speak. Did not even seem to breathe. "What?" "Simone Hayes. Your paralegal. Your girlfriend for the past 8 months. I know about the hotels. I know about the gifts. I know about your little plan to cut off intimacy from me so I would start fights and give you grounds for divorce." He opened his mouth but nothing came out. "I have screenshots of every text message. Every photo. Every conversation where you two discussed how to get rid of me. My lawyer has copies of everything." Brandon's face shifted from white to gray. I watched him realize in real time that he was not as clever as he thought he was. "Amara," he started. "I can explain. I do not want your explanation. I do not want your apology. I do not want anything from you except what I am legally entitled to in our divorce. Can we at least try counseling? I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I still love you." I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. "You do not love me. You have not loved me in a long time. You just did not want to be the one who looked bad when it ended." "That is not true." "It is true. I read the messages, Brandon. I know exactly what you planned. You wanted me to be the crazy wife who drove you away. You wanted sympathy from your family and friends while you walked off into the sunset with your side piece. Well, that is not going to happen." He stepped toward me, reaching for my hand. I stepped back. Do not touch me, I said. We're done. The only communication between us from now on will be through our attorneys. Amara, please. Goodbye, Brandon. I turned and walked back into my building. I did not look back. I did not need to. I could feel his eyes on me the entire way, watching his perfect plan fall apart. That night, he tried to call me from different numbers. 3 different phones, all numbers I did not recognize. I blocked each one after the first ring. Then he tried email. Long, rambling messages alternating between apologizing and blaming me. I forwarded every email to Patricia without reading past the first line. By the end of the week, he had hired his own attorney. Patricia called to tell me that his lawyer was requesting a meeting to discuss settlement terms. He wants to negotiate, she said. That is a good sign. It means he does not want this to go to trial. What do you think he will offer? Something low. They always start low. He will probably offer you the house in exchange for waiving rights to his retirement accounts. Or he will offer to split everything 50-50 and pretend like the affair never happened. What should I accept? Nothing yet. Let him make the first move. Then we counter. The evidence we have of his infidelity gives us significant leverage. He knows that if this goes to trial, the affair becomes public record. His reputation at his firm, his standing in the legal community, all of it could be damaged. I thought about Brandon's face when I told him I knew about Simone. The fear in his eyes. The realization that he was no longer in control. He will fight dirty, I said. He does not like to lose. Neither do I, Patricia reminded me. Trust the process. We are going to win this. A week later we had our first mediation session. It was held in a neutral conference room in a downtown office building. Brandon sat on one side of the table with his attorney, a thin man with glasses who looked like he had never smiled in his life. I sat on the other side with Patricia. We did not look at each other directly. All communication went through the lawyers. Brandon's opening offer was insulting. He proposed that I keep my personal belongings and receive a small cash settlement in exchange for giving up any claim to the house, his retirement accounts, or his other assets. Patricia did not even blink. My client is entitled to half of all marital assets. That includes the house, the retirement accounts, the investment portfolio, and the savings accounts. In addition, given the documented evidence of your client's infidelity and financial misconduct, we believe the court would be sympathetic to awarding a larger portion to Mrs. Thompson. Brandon's attorney leaned in and whispered something to him. Brandon's jaw tightened, but he nodded. We can discuss a more equitable split, the attorney said carefully. But my client insists that this matter be resolved quickly and privately. He does not want a prolonged legal battle. Then he should not have conducted an 8-month affair, Patricia replied coolly. My client is not in a rush. She is prepared to take this matter to trial if necessary. The mediation ended without an agreement. But I could see the cracks forming in Brandon's confidence. He had expected me to roll over, to accept whatever scraps he threw my way just to make this end. Instead, I was fighting back. And I was winning. Walking out of the building, Patricia put a hand on my shoulder. You did well in there, she said. Some clients fall apart in mediation. You were calm and steady. I have already done my falling apart, I said. In private. Now I am just finishing what he started. She smiled. That predator smile again. Good. Because this is only the beginning. The second mediation session was worse than the first. Brandon came in aggressive, his attorney armed with accusations and demands. They claimed I had abandoned the marriage. They questioned my mental state. They even suggested that I had been the one with inappropriate relationships, pointing to my recent closeness with Tiffany as evidence of instability. Patricia shut them down with calm precision. My client has time-stamped evidence of your client's infidelity going back 8 months, she said, sliding a folder across the table. Text messages, photographs, hotel receipts. All paid for with marital funds. Any attempt to paint my client as the wrongdoer will be met with the full disclosure of this evidence in court. Brandon's attorney went quiet after that. He flipped through the folder, his face growing more pinched with each page. Brandon himself would not look at me. He sat with his arms crossed, staring at a spot on the wall like he was trying to burn a hole through it. We need to discuss custody arrangements, his attorney said finally, clearly trying to change the subject. There are no children in this marriage, Patricia replied. Custody is not applicable. I meant for the property. Specifically the house. The house. Our house. The one I had helped pick out, decorated with care and turned into a home. The one where I had been rejected and humiliated for months while Brandon pursued his affair. I did not want that house anymore. It held nothing but bad memories. My client is willing to relinquish her claim to the house, Patricia said, in exchange for a larger share of the liquid assets and full ownership of the marital vehicle currently in her possession. Brandon's head snapped toward me. For the first time in the session he looked at me directly. I could see the surprise in his eyes. He had expected me to fight for the house. Expected that to be the battleground where we tore each other apart. Instead, I was letting it go. Moving on. Refusing to be tied to anything that reminded me of him. That is acceptable, his attorney said quickly before Brandon could object. We spent the rest of the session hashing out details. The retirement accounts would be split 60-40 in my favor, based on the documented evidence of his financial misconduct during the affair. The savings accounts would be divided evenly. The investment portfolio would be liquidated and split. By the end, Brandon looked diminished, smaller somehow, like the fight had gone out of him. But I knew better than to let my guard down. Patricia had warned me that some people became most dangerous when they felt cornered. She was right. 2 days after the mediation, Brandon showed up at my apartment. I do not know how he found the address. Maybe he followed me from work. Maybe he hired someone to track me down. Either way, when I came home that evening, he was sitting on the steps outside my building. "We need to talk," he said, standing up when he saw me. "We have lawyers for that. This is different. This is about us. About our marriage." I stopped walking and faced him. He looked rough. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw, wrinkled shirt like he had been sleeping in his car. "There is no us anymore, Brandon. There is no marriage. There could be. If you would just give me another chance." His voice cracked slightly. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I have ended things with her. It is over. I want us to try again." I felt nothing. No sympathy. No anger. Just a hollow emptiness where my feelings for this man used to live. "You want me back because you are losing," I said quietly. "Because the divorce is not going the way you planned. Because your family is starting to ask questions. You do not want me. You want to stop the bleeding." "That is not true." "It is true. I know you better than you think, Brandon. I have watched you for 8 years. I know how your mind works." He stepped closer. "Please, Amara. I am begging you. Do not throw away everything we built. You threw it away. Months ago. When you decided another woman was more important than your wife. I was wrong. I know that now. Knowing is not enough. Actions matter. And your actions have shown me exactly who you are." He reached for my hand. I pulled away before he could touch me. "Leave," I said. "Do not come here again. If you show up at my home or my workplace again, I will file for a restraining order." His face twisted. The pleading mask slipped and I saw the anger underneath. "You are going to regret this," he said. "When you are alone and miserable, you are going to remember that I tried to fix things. I tried to make it right. The only thing I regret is not leaving sooner." I walked past him, unlocked my building's front door and went inside without looking back. I heard him standing there for a long moment. Then footsteps retreating. A car door slamming. An engine starting and driving away. I stood in my hallway with my back against the wall, breathing slowly until my heart stopped racing. He was gone. For now. The third mediation session was scheduled for the following week. But before we got there, something unexpected happened. Brandon's parents reached out to me. Evelyn Thompson called on a Sunday afternoon. I almost did not answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Amara," she said, her voice formal and cold. "Harold and I would like to meet with you." "Why?" "We have questions about the divorce. Things we would like to understand." I considered saying no. These people had never been particularly warm toward me. Judge Harold Thompson was a stern man who rarely spoke at family gatherings, and Evelyn had always looked at me like I was not quite good enough for her son. But I agreed to meet them. If they had questions, they deserved answers. And if they were going to take Brandon's side, I wanted them to do it with full knowledge of what he had done. We met at a coffee shop the next day. Harold and Evelyn were already seated when I arrived, both of them looking uncomfortable in the casual setting. "Thank you for coming," Evelyn said stiffly. I sat down across from them. "What did you want to know?" Harold cleared his throat. "Brandon has told us that you left him without warning. That you filed for divorce based on misunderstandings and refused to discuss things. Is that what he told you?" "Yes." I reached into my purse and pulled out a printed copy of the text messages. The same ones Patricia had shown Brandon's lawyer. The same ones that documented his affair in explicit detail. "This is the truth," I said, sliding the papers across the table. They read together, their faces changing as they progressed through the messages. Evelyn's hand went to her mouth. Harold's jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscles jumping. When they finished, there was a long silence. "We did not know," Evelyn said finally, her voice small. "He told us you were having problems. That you were drifting apart. He never mentioned his girlfriend of 8 months? I am not surprised." Harold looked up at me. "We apologize. On behalf of our family. This is not how we raised him." I nodded but said nothing. Their apology did not change what had happened. But it felt validating somehow. To have them acknowledge that their son was not the victim he claimed to be. "We will not interfere in the divorce proceedings," Harold continued. "But we want you to know that we do not support what he did. And if there is anything we can do." "There is nothing," I said. "I just need it to be over." They nodded. We finished our coffee in awkward silence, then went our separate ways. Later that week, Patricia called with news. "Brandon's attorney is pushing for a quick settlement," she said. "I think his parents got involved. They want this resolved quietly before it damages the family reputation." "What are they offering?" "The house, the full 60-40 split on retirement, all liquid assets divided evenly, and he will pay your attorney's fees." I was silent for a moment. It was more than I had expected. More than I had hoped for. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think it is a fair offer. If you accept, we can finalize everything within the next few weeks." I thought about what I wanted. Not revenge. Not victory. Just freedom. "Accept it," I said. "I want this done." Patricia said she would handle everything. All I had to do was sign the papers when they were ready. That night, I sat in my apartment and looked around at the life I had built in just a few weeks. It was small. Simple. Entirely mine. For the first time since this all began, I felt truly at peace. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Wednesday in October. Patricia called me with the news while I was at work, reviewing a presentation for a major client meeting. "It is done," she said. "The judge signed off this morning. You are officially divorced." I thanked her, hung up the phone, and stared at my computer screen for a long moment. 5 years of marriage reduced to a signature on a piece of paper. It should have felt bigger somehow. More momentous. But mostly it just felt like relief. That evening, Tiffany took me out to celebrate. We went to a restaurant we had loved in college, a small place with mismatched chairs and the best pasta in the city. "To new beginnings," Tiffany said, raising her glass of red wine. "To new beginnings," I echoed. We ate too much, drank too much, and laughed until our sides hurt. It felt like being young again. Before marriage, before heartbreak, before I learned what betrayal really meant. "So what now?" Tiffany asked over dessert. "What is the next chapter?" I had been thinking about that a lot lately. My job was going well. I had just been promoted to senior marketing manager, the position I had been working toward for years. My apartment was starting to feel like home. I had even started exercising again, something I had abandoned during the worst months of my marriage. "I want to do something more," I said. "Something bigger. I have been thinking about starting my own consulting firm." Tiffany's eyebrows went up. "Really? Why not?" "I have the experience. I have the contacts. And I am tired of building someone else's dream." "I love it," Tiffany declared. "I will be your first client." I laughed. "You do not need marketing consulting." "Maybe not. But I believe in you. And that is what matters." The idea of starting my own business had been growing in the back of my mind for months. During all those sleepless nights in my marriage, when I lay awake wondering what was wrong with me, I had also been thinking about what I really wanted from life. Not what Brandon wanted. Not what anyone expected of me. What I wanted. I wanted independence. I wanted to create something that was entirely mine. I wanted to prove, mostly to myself, that I could build a life worth living on my own terms. The weeks after my divorce finalized were busy. I worked on my business plan in the evenings after my regular job. I researched competitors, identified potential clients, and calculated startup costs. It was exhausting but exhilarating. Then, at a business conference downtown, I ran into Derek Foster. I had not seen Derek since college. We had been in the same marketing program, and he had always stood out as the most ambitious person in our class. While the rest of us were worried about getting jobs after graduation, Derek was already planning his first startup. He had done well for himself. Very well. His tech company had grown into one of the most successful in the region, and his name regularly appeared in business publications as an innovator to watch. "Amara Bennett?" he said, approaching me during a networking break. "I cannot believe it. How long has it been?" "Too long," I admitted, shaking his hand. "I have been following your success. Impressive stuff." "Thanks. What about you? Still at the same firm? For now. But I am working on something new. We talked for the rest of the conference. Derek was easy to talk to, genuine and curious without being pushy. When I mentioned my plans to start a consulting firm, his eyes lit up. I love that, he said. The market is wide open for someone with your experience. Have you thought about your target clients? Small to medium businesses that cannot afford big agency fees but need professional marketing strategies. That is smart. There is a huge gap there. He pulled out his business card. Let me know when you launch. I might be able to send some referrals your way. I took the card and thanked him. As I walked away, I noticed that I was smiling. Not because of any romantic interest, but because for the first time in months, someone was seeing me as a professional instead of a divorced woman picking up the pieces. That encounter gave me the push I needed. Over the next few weeks, I finalized my business plan and took the leap. I gave notice at my job, which my boss accepted with disappointment but understanding. I filed the paperwork to register my LLC. I designed a simple website and ordered business cards. Bennett Marketing Consulting. That was the name I chose. Using my maiden name felt right. Like reclaiming a piece of myself I had lost. My first client was a small bakery downtown that needed help building their social media presence. The work was not glamorous, but it was mine. I threw myself into it, designing campaigns and tracking metrics like my life depended on it. Word spread. The bakery owner told a friend who told another friend. Within 2 months, I had more clients than I could handle alone. I started turning down work because there was simply not enough time in the day. Derek followed up on his promise. He referred 3 different business owners to me, each of whom became long-term clients. We started meeting for coffee occasionally to discuss industry trends and compare notes. You should scale, he said one afternoon. Hire some help. You are leaving money on the table by staying small. I am not sure I am ready to be someone's boss. You're already a boss. You just do not have employees yet. He smiled. Think about it. I know some people who might be looking for work. I thought about it. A lot. The idea of growing my business from a solo operation into a real company was terrifying but exciting. Grandma Ruth's voice echoed in my head. You come from strong stock, Amara Bennett. Do not you ever forget that. I was not forgetting. I was proving it. 6 months after launching, I hired my first employee. Then a second. We moved from my apartment's home office into a small but professional space downtown. I had a real business, a real staff, a real future, and I had built it all on my own. Meanwhile, Brandon's life was falling apart. I heard the news through the grapevine, through mutual acquaintances who thought I should know, through Tiffany who had sources everywhere. His performance at work had suffered. Projects were delayed. Clients were complaining. The partners at his firm had put him on notice. Then the affair became public. Someone at his firm discovered the truth and started talking. Within weeks, everyone knew. The attorneys, the paralegals, the support staff. They all knew that Brandon Thompson, the rising star, had been cheating on his wife with a junior employee. His reputation crumbled. The firm quietly removed him from their partnership track. Clients asked to be reassigned to other attorneys. His colleagues stopped inviting him to lunches and networking events. I heard he moved out of our old house and into a small apartment on the other side of town. The house was too big for one person anyway and too full of memories he probably wanted to forget. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction. This was karma after all. He had tried to destroy me and instead he had destroyed himself. But mostly I just felt distant from it all. Like it was happening to someone I used to know, in a life that was no longer mine. I was too busy building my future to dwell on his past. The full collapse of Brandon Thompson's carefully constructed life happened over the span of 3 months. It started with the whispers at his firm. The affair, once hidden behind closed doors and secret hotel rooms, had become common knowledge. Someone had seen the divorce filings. Someone else had connected the dots about his long lunches with Simone Hayes. Before long, everyone from the senior partners to the mailroom clerk knew the truth. In the legal world, reputation is everything. Brandon had spent years building his image as a trustworthy, ethical attorney. The kind of man you could rely on to handle sensitive cases with discretion. The kind of man whose word meant something. That image was shattered now. I heard about it from Patricia, who still had contacts at his firm. They removed him from the Mackenzie case, she told me over the phone. That was his biggest client. The partners reassigned it to someone else without even discussing it with him first. What about the partnership? Off the table. Indefinitely. Some of the senior partners are pushing for him to leave the firm entirely. I felt nothing. No joy, no sadness. Just a hollow acknowledgement that consequences had finally caught up with a man who thought he could escape them. Simone Hayes did not fare much better. In the chaos following the affair's exposure, Brandon had done what Brandon always did. He protected himself. According to the gossip that filtered through various channels, he told anyone who would listen that Simone had pursued him, that she had been relentless in her advances, that he had been weak but she had been predatory. He threw her under the bus without a second thought. Simone was let go from the firm 2 weeks later. Officially, it was a restructuring. Unofficially, everyone knew she was being removed to avoid further scandal. I found out through Tiffany, whose cousin worked in the same building. She is devastated, Tiffany reported. Apparently she really believed he was going to leave you for her, that they were going to build a life together. And instead he blamed the whole thing on her and walked away. I thought about Simone. About the woman who had received the lingerie I never saw, who had spent 8 months believing she was special while helping Brandon scheme against his own wife. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. She had been lied to just like me. Used and discarded when she was no longer convenient. But mostly I felt nothing. She had made her choices. She had known he was married. She had actively participated in plans to hurt me. Whatever happened to her now was her own doing. I was not going to waste my energy on sympathy. The final blow to Brandon's crumbling empire came from his own family. Judge Harold Thompson had spent his entire career building a legacy of integrity. He was known throughout the legal community as a man of principle, someone who held himself and others to the highest standards. Having a son who cheated on his wife with a coworker and then tried to manipulate the divorce to make himself look innocent was, apparently, more than Harold could stomach. I learned about their confrontation from an unexpected source, Evelyn Thompson herself. She called me on a Sunday evening, 3 months after the divorce was finalized. I almost did not answer. Amara, she said, her voice tired. I know I have no right to call you, but I wanted you to know something. Okay. Harold spoke with Brandon last week. About everything that happened. About the affair, the divorce, the way he treated you. I was silent, waiting. It did not go well, Evelyn continued. Harold told Brandon he was ashamed of him. That he had raised him to be better than this. They have not spoken since. I was not sure how to respond. Part of me was surprised that Harold had taken such a strong stance. Another part wondered if it was really about me at all, or if Harold was more concerned about his own reputation. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I wanted you to know that we believe you, and that we are sorry for what our son put you through. Her voice cracked slightly. I failed as a mother somewhere. I do not know where, but I failed. Thank you for telling me, I said. I appreciate it. We hung up and I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time. The Thompson family was fracturing because of Brandon's choices. His parents were disappointed. His career was in ruins. His reputation was destroyed. The woman he had cheated with had been discarded. Everything he had built was crumbling around him. And I was thriving. Bennett Marketing Consulting had grown faster than I ever expected. We now had 4 employees working out of our downtown office. Our client list had expanded to include restaurants, boutiques, tech startups, and even a few larger corporations. I was working harder than I ever had in my life. But it was good work. Fulfilling work. Work that belonged to me. My apartment had transformed from an empty space to a real home. I had added plants, artwork, comfortable furniture. Tiffany said it finally looked like someone lived there. Someone who has her life together, she added with a smile. I was not sure about having my life together. There were still hard days. Still moments when I woke up at 3 a.m. and wondered how everything had gone so wrong. Still times when I caught myself reaching for a phone to text a husband who no longer existed. But those moments were fewer now. And shorter. And surrounded by longer stretches of peace. One afternoon, Derek stopped by my office with coffee and a proposition. I have a business proposal, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Hear me out before you say no. I am listening. My company is launching a new product line next quarter. We need a full marketing campaign from strategy to execution. I want to hire Bennett Marketing. I blinked. Derek, that is a huge contract. I do not know if we have the capacity. You can expand. Hire more people. This could put your firm on the map. I thought about what he was offering. It was the biggest opportunity one had ever been presented with. The kind of project that could transform my business from a small boutique operation into something truly significant. But it would also mean relying on Derek. Trusting him with my professional future. After everything I had been through, trusting anyone felt like a risk. He seemed to read my hesitation. I know what you are thinking. But this is business, Amara. I'm not trying to complicate your life. I am trying to help you succeed because I think you are talented. Why? Why what? Why do you care about my success? He paused, considering the question. Because I remember you from college. You were the smartest person in our program. You had ideas and ambition and drive. And then you disappeared into someone else's life. Someone who did not deserve you. I felt my face flush. You heard about the divorce. Everyone heard about it. Brandon Thompson is not exactly keeping a low profile these days. Derek leaned forward. But that is not why I am here. I am here because I believe in your business. And I think we could do great work together. I told him I would think about it. He nodded, finished his coffee, and left. That night I called Grandma Ruth. What should I do? I asked her. It is a big opportunity but a big risk. Baby, every good thing comes with risk, she said. The question is whether you are running towards something or running away from something. What do you mean? Are you hesitating because you think it is a bad idea? Or because you are scared of trusting again? I thought about her question for a long time after we hung up. The truth was I was scared. Scared of depending on anyone. Scared of being vulnerable. Scared of what might happen if I let someone into my professional life the same way I had let Brandon into my personal one. But fear was not a reason to say no. Fear was a reason to be careful. And I could be careful while still moving forward. The next morning I called Derek and accepted his proposal. 7 months after the divorce was finalized, Brandon Thompson showed up at my office. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of reviewing campaign analytics when my assistant knocked on my door. There is someone here to see you, she said, her face uncertain. He says his name is Brandon Thompson. I felt my stomach drop. For a moment, I considered having her tell him I was not available. But running from this would not make it go away. Send him in, I said. Brandon walked into my office looking nothing like the confident attorney I had married. He had lost weight. His suit did not fit properly anymore. His eyes had a desperate quality I had never seen before. Thank you for seeing me, he said, standing awkwardly in front of my desk. What do you want, Brandon? He sat down without being invited, clasping his hands together like he was praying. I made a mistake, he started. You have said that before. I know. But this time I mean it. I have had months to think about everything. About what I did. About what I lost. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. I want us to try again. I stared at him, trying to understand if this was real or some kind of manipulation. Try again, I repeated flatly. Yes. I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed your trust. But I have changed, Amara. I have been seeing a therapist. I've been working on myself. I understand now why I did what I did. Why did you do it? Because I was scared. Scared of how much I needed you. Scared of being vulnerable. So I pushed you away instead. I created distance so I could protect myself. He leaned forward. But I see now that I was protecting myself from the best thing in my life. It was almost impressive how sincerely he could lie. How earnestly he could twist reality to serve his purposes. A year ago I might have believed him. I might have been desperate enough to grab onto any hope of saving my marriage. But I was not that woman anymore. You created distance by sleeping with another woman for 8 months, I said calmly. You created distance by deliberately withholding intimacy so you could make me look like the problem. You created distance by planning your exit strategy while lying to my face every single day. I know all of that. And I am sorry. Sorry is not enough, Brandon. Sorry does not undo what you did. Sorry does not rebuild trust that has been completely destroyed. He reached across my desk, trying to take my hand. I pulled away before he could touch me. Please, he said. Give me another chance. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I will do whatever it takes. I thought about everything he had put me through. The months of crying myself to sleep. The shame of discovering his affair. The pain of realizing that our entire marriage had been a lie. And then I thought about everything I had built since walking away. My business. My independence. My self-respect. No, I said. Amara, please. No. I'm not going to give you another chance. I'm not going to let you back into my life. What we had is over, and it has been over for a long time. His face twisted. The mask of contrition slipped, and I saw something harder underneath. Anger. Resentment. The same ugliness that had driven him to betray me in the first place. You are making a mistake, he said, his voice losing its pleading tone. You think you are better off without me? Look around. You are running a tiny little business out of a rented office. You live alone. You have no one. I smiled. It surprised both of us. I have myself, I said. For the first time in years I have myself. And that is worth more than anything you could ever offer me. He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. You will regret this, he said. When you realize what you threw away, you will come crawling back. And I will not be there. Good. I am counting on it. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out of my office. I heard his footsteps retreat down the hallway, the door to the stairwell slam behind him. He was gone. For good this time. I sat at my desk for a long while after he left, waiting for the tears to come. Waiting for the regret to hit. Waiting for some sign that I had made the wrong choice. But all I felt was peace. The door opened again and my assistant poked her head in. Are you okay? I am better than okay, I said. Can you cancel my afternoon meetings? I need to go see my grandmother. Grandma Ruth was sitting on her porch when I arrived, a glass of sweet tea in her hand and her Bible in her lap. The garden was still overgrown, but I noticed someone had trimmed the bushes near the steps. There is my girl, she said as I climbed the porch. You look different. Different how? Lighter. Like someone took a weight off your shoulders. I sat down beside her and told her about Brandon's visit. About his attempt to reconcile. About my refusal. About the peace I felt afterward. She listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. You did the right thing, she said when I finished. Some men can change. But some men just learn new ways to lie. You learn the difference and that is wisdom. I was afraid I would feel sad. Or have doubts. Do you? I thought about it honestly. No. I feel free. She reached over and took my hand, her weathered fingers warm against my skin. That is because you finally chose yourself, baby. After all those years of putting him first, you finally put yourself first. And there is nothing more powerful than a woman who knows her own worth. We sat together on that porch until the sun started to set, talking about everything and nothing. About my business and her garden. About my mother and my childhood. About the future I was building. When I left, she stood on the porch and waved until my car disappeared around the corner. Driving home, I thought about everything that had happened in the past year. The betrayal. The divorce. The rebuilding. It had been the hardest 12 months of my life. But also the most important. I had walked into that marriage believing I needed Brandon to be complete. I had walked out of it knowing I was complete all on my own. And nothing, not even his final pathetic attempt at reconciliation, could take that from me. 1 year later, everything was different. The launch party for Bennett Marketing's new division was held on a Friday evening in late September. We had rented out the rooftop of a downtown hotel, strung lights across the railings, and filled the space with flowers and champagne. It was bigger than anything I had ever done before. Bigger than anything I had ever dreamed. I stood by the railing in a deep maroon dress, watching the city lights spread out below me. The air was cool but not cold, and the sky was clear enough to see stars even through the urban glow. Quite a view, Derek said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. He handed me one. Quite a night, I agreed. The partnership with his company had been even more successful than we had hoped. The marketing campaign we created together had generated millions in revenue and earned recognition across the industry. Other companies had taken notice. Our client list had tripled. We had moved into a larger office and hired 6 new employees. Bennett Marketing was no longer a small boutique firm. It was a real player. I have a confession, Derek said, leaning against the railing beside me. What is that? When I first approached you about that contract, I was not just interested in your marketing skills. I raised an eyebrow. Oh. I remembered you from college, Amara. You were brilliant back then and you are even more brilliant now. But it was not just your talent that caught my attention. I felt my cheeks warm slightly. Derek. I am not trying to make things weird, he said quickly. I know you just went through a lot. And I know you need time. But I wanted you to know that I admire you. As a professional and as a person. I looked at him. Really looked. He was a good man. Successful but grounded. Ambitious but kind. The kind of man I might have overlooked a year ago because I was too busy trying to fix a broken marriage. Thank you for telling me, I said. Does that mean you might be open to having dinner sometime? Not a business dinner. A real dinner. I thought about it. The idea of dating again still felt strange. Foreign. Like wearing clothes that did not quite fit yet. But maybe that was okay. Maybe I did not have to have everything figured out. Maybe I could just take one step at a time and see where it led. Maybe, I said. Ask me again in a few months. He smiled. I can do that. We stood together watching the party below. My employees mingling with clients. Tiffany laughing too loud at something someone said. My mother talking seriously with Patricia, probably about legal matters I did not want to know about. Everyone I cared about was here. Everyone who had supported me through the worst year of my life. Grandma Ruth was at home, too frail now to travel to events like this. But she had sent flowers that morning with a card that read, "Your grandfather would be so proud." So am I. I had cried when I read it. Happy tears this time. There you are, Tiffany said, appearing suddenly and pulling me into a hug. The woman of the hour, hiding on the roof. Not hiding. Appreciating. Same thing. She pulled back and looked at me with tears in her eyes. I am so proud of you, Amara. You built all of this from nothing. Not nothing. I had help. You had determination. The help just showed up along the way. The party continued late into the night. I gave a speech that I had rehearsed a dozen times but still fumbled through nervously. Everyone applauded anyway. Around midnight, when most of the guests had gone home and only a handful of stragglers remained, I stepped outside for some air. My phone buzzed with a text from Tiffany, who had already left. Check your email. Sent you something interesting. I opened my email and saw a forwarded article from a legal news website. Thompson Partners announces departure of Senior Associate Brandon Thompson. I read the article slowly. Brandon had been let go from his firm. Not fired outright, but encouraged to resign. The article mentioned declining performance and undisclosed personal issues. He was unemployed. His career was effectively over. I stared at the article for a long time, waiting to feel something. Satisfaction maybe. Or vindication. After everything he had put me through, seeing him fail should have felt like justice. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of thinking about him. Tired of caring what happened to him. Tired of carrying even the memory of our relationship around with me. I closed the email without responding to Tiffany. Brandon Thompson was part of my past now. A chapter 1 had closed and would not reopen. The future was what mattered. The business I was building. The relationships I was nurturing. The woman I was becoming. I walked back into the party and found Derek talking with one of my employees about marketing trends. He looked up when I approached and smiled. Everything okay? He asked. Everything is perfect. And for the first time in a long time, I actually meant it. The next morning, I drove to Grandma Ruth's house with leftover flowers from the party. She was sitting on her porch as always, watching the birds in her overgrown garden. Tell me everything, she said as I sat down beside her. So I did. I told her about the speeches and the champagne. About Derek's confession and my cautious response. About the article I had read and the peace I felt afterward. She listened with her eyes half closed, nodding occasionally. You know what your problem was? She said when I finished. What? You spent too many years trying to be somebody's everything. Wife, supporter, cheerleader. You poured yourself into that man and there was nothing left for you. I know. But now look at you. She opened her eyes and smiled. You are a business owner. An employer. A success. And you did it all on your own. I had help, I repeated. You had love. That is different from help. Love holds you up when you are falling. But you are the one who climbed back up. You are the one who chose to keep going when everything in you wanted to quit. I felt tears prick my eyes. I learned from the best. She squeezed my hand. You learned from your own strength, baby. I just reminded you it was there. We sat together on that porch for hours, watching the sun climb higher in the sky. When I finally left, I did not feel sad. I felt grateful. Grateful for the grandmother who believed in me. For the friend who stood by me. For the lawyer who fought for me. For the man who had shown me that I deserved better, even if he did not know that was the lesson he was teaching. Grateful for the pain that had made me stronger. For the betrayal that had set me free. For the ending that was really a beginning. I drove home through streets that were starting to feel familiar. Past my office building with its big windows and growing staff. Past the coffee shop where Derek and I had first reconnected. Past the apartment that had become my sanctuary. My phone buzzed with a reminder about a meeting tomorrow. About a deadline next week. About a life that was busy and full and entirely my own. Brandon Thompson had thought I would beg when he cut off intimacy. He thought his little scheme would break me down until I became the villain he needed. But he was wrong. I stopped chasing. I walked away. And I built something better from the ashes of what he destroyed. That was not revenge. That was survival. And it was only the beginning.